Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a new edition of News. Today, we're gonna talk about Africa in the 19th century. We're gonna bring a special guest that came all the way from Africa just to talk with us. And we're gonna have a special talk with a lovely co-hoster, Sofía. She's gonna talk about how was Africa in the 19th century. Sofía, tell me, how was it?
Hello, Tom, and thanks for the welcome. First of all, it is important to talk about the religion in Africa in that period of time. In the early 80s, Africa was mostly Muslim. The Sokoto Empire, in what now is southern Nigeria, became the largest Muslim state. Their leader was Usman Dan Fodio, and he led a holy war against the other religions, which leads to the longest empire in West Africa. The missionaries arrived in Africa in the early 19th century. Their purpose was to bring Christianity to Africa, where they practiced either traditional religion or Islam. They set up religious communities that offer services like education and medical. Another important aspect of Africa is the culture. Throughout Africa, people speak a variety of languages, practice numerous religions, and reside in various types of dwellings. The majority of people living in Africa are indigenous. However, people from all over the world have migrated to Africa for hundreds of years. Ethnic groups and African tribes have customs that are unique to them.
Well, I love this, but sorry, we need to move on with this. Coming up next, Gonzáles, an African person comes to talk about conflicts in this country.
Well, sorry, this is great. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks for
No.
coming.
I'm glad that you let me come because I want to talk about two specifically conflicts in Africa. I'm glad that you let me come because I want to talk about two things specifically. South African War, 1899 to 1902 in Southern Africa. The war between Great Britain and the Boer republics of Transvaal and Orange Free State, which ended with the British victory and annexation of the two Boer republics, is for several reasons. Here are just a few facts about it. It was the longest and most costly war that the British fought during the 19th century. It provided an example of the type of war that would come to characterize the First World War. The two annexed Boer republics would with the British colonies of Cape and Natal, later from the Union of South Africa in 1910, the forerunner of today's Republic of South Africa. Ethiopian War, 1935 to 1936 in Ethiopia. Almost 4 decades later, Italy may have thought that it finally had revenge when Italian forces invaded Ethiopia in 1935 and annexed the country the following year. But their unwelcome escape was relatively short-lived as the World War II Allied powers liberated the country in 1941. This conflict is often considered to be one of the episodes that prepared the way for World War II.
We have a call. Wait.
Thanks, Tom. Now, in this segment of the show called Economy with Rudolph, first off, all England also imperialized Africa because of the economic benefits including resources, labor, and new markets. Africa's resources were left largely untouched by natives, so they were large supplies of easily accessible resources. Gold and diamonds were and still are two of the most valuable resources on the planet, and they were abundant in Africa. The discovery of diamond and rich gold deposits brought European settlers to Africa. Another reason for British imperialism of Africa was labor. Africa had a cheap, untapped labor pool that would work long hours for little money. This increased the profitability of every British industry in Africa. It also allowed Britain to outsource industries like the production of rubber, and third reason of British imperialism was the prospect of the new markets. The British were compelled to seek the new markets. Essentially, the British were able to sell the cheap manufactured goods for the population in Africa. In Africa, all of the raw goods will be shipped to England and processed. Then it will all be shipped back in the form of clothes and pots and pans. This created a poor cycle for Africa but a profitable one for England. The cheap manufactured goods from England caused a steep decline in Africa's industry because they could not compete with Europe's lower prices. Another reason for African decline was the companies that forced Africans to work long hours for little or no pay. Even though England's economy benefited from African imperialism, England destroyed Africa's economy and depleted their resources out of greed.
The early 80s also saw the rise of a mighty Zulu nation in southern Africa, led first by the chief Dingiswayo and then his general and successor Shaka. The Zulus followed the pattern of overtaking smaller kingdoms and then uniting them into one empire. Shaka replaced the traditional warfare practiced during his childhood with the formation of age group military units.
I want to take a moment to talk about politics and government of Africa like my partner was doing. Well, Egypt was strengthened under the leadership of a strong ruler, Muhammad Ali, not the boxer. He reformed and modernized education and the army. New developments in irrigation systems were in place to increase productivity in the cotton, sugar, and grain fields. Cities were expanded as center of learning, and new buildings replaced those that had deteriorated or been nearly destroyed in war, as the war that they had. Muhammad Ali's progress was maintained by several generations of his successors. Under his grandson Ismail, the Suez Canal was constructed. The canal connected the Mediterranean Sea to the Red Sea and provided a more direct trade route between Europe and India. The Dutch settlement of Cape Colony. They were also a very important part of the African political and government history. It was a part named as imperialism in Africa by Europe. Europe made his country by a conference named Conference of Berlin in 1885. They reparted Africa like a cake in between the countries, the major countries in the moment, the better powers, the stronger one. Like some of them are Britain, France, Portugal. Portugal was the weakest one. It was the one that lose the most, but there were other ones. There were also imperialism was based because imperialism, the definition known as imperialism is the imposition of culture, religion, or other things of one country into another. And imperialism was divided
Like this image.
Get out! Sorry, folks. Technical problems. Yeah, like that image. Imperialism was made by Europe in Africa until the independence of each country. But that was in 20th century. So the most part of 18th century, it was an imperialism country. And we creo que terminé porque el profesor me distrajo, entonces ya no tengo.
The conclusion that was Africa in the 19th century was having colonies of imperialism of the European countries. This was because of the natural resources that Africa could produce, like diamonds, gold, or even oil. Most of these countries were harmed by the imperialism, like having wars or even being discriminated by the colonies.